few days ago, I didn't expect to be making a rant video and have a use for these again, but whatever, I'm gonna dress up appropriately for this one. That's better. Before I started writing this one, I was asked by user BoxoArt, so what should we expect? A rage-fueled screed towards LEGO for what they've done? A somber but hopeful remembrance of the franchise as a whole and what could come in the future? A plea to the fanbase not to go to war over this? Something else? At the time I answered B, maybe a little of C. But looking at the way the script has turned out, I'm going with all of the above, so sit tight as we touch upon everything that's contributed in some way to Bionicle's most recent downfall. So, Bionicle G2 has been canned. I suspected something like this could happen, but I hoped it wouldn't, and I ended my review of the Shadow Beast on a positive note, looking forward to anything that may come about in 2017, and encouraging others to do the same. I know some people don't care about these sets, but I think they're pretty good, some of them even pretty great. Sure, there were the oddballs like Skull Scorpio and Kitar, but that's the worst it ever got, and there's still only like 2 out of 35 sets. The line has been pretty solid. The 2015 Toho were kinda basic in some ways, but they brought back gear functions and combined it with modern standards of posability and different heights, builds, and looks and such. The Protectors were a good Matoran stand-in and made the Island of Koto feel populated. These figures were colorful and had an elemental feel that took me back to the early years. The island itself, while essentially being a giant pizza, made an intense setting to set the new story in. The creatures helped make the place feel even more alive and diverse, and it was just great to see Bionicle animals appearing again. The Skull villains were so-so, but I feel Umurak and the Shadow Beast really raised the bar, and the 2016 Toho were the bomb to me. They all had their quirks, including a few mildly annoying ones, but they had almost everything people said the 2015 Toho were missing. They were more detailed, having way more of that old school texture. They had better proportions in some ways, with their shoulders moved forward and the gear function moved down, and they had an even more intensely elemental, even sort of spiritual feel with the emphasis on trans pieces and whatnot, which seems to be what they were going for in the story. Plus we got a lot of cool masks to collect over these 2 years. And now it's over. Just like that. There are no more sets aside from a couple of polybags and combiner models that I don't really care about for me to review, and there won't be any more. Probably forever. I gotta tell you, this really came out of nowhere, like a punch to the gut. The writing was on the wall. It was clear the line wasn't selling that great, and G2's days were numbered. I and many others had accepted that Bionicle would be ending next year, and probably even with just a goodbye wave around New Year's at that. So at least I had that to look forward to, you know, just one more wave. I mean, this line was really going somewhere. The playability of this year's sets was outstanding. The creatures on the Toho united with all their added functions and everything. It really elevated LEGO's construction lines to a whole new level. Like, they raised the ceiling of how much they could accomplish with their buildable action figure lines. How much cooler could a third wave of Toho possibly be? Maybe Akimu's new body was a sign of things to come, like they'd create a completely new torso build that seamlessly combined the 2 previous year's functions in a brand new way that didn't look nearly as awkward, or they'd have an entirely new function that would blow us away. And I couldn't even imagine what they would look like, because the designs were so fresh this year. They'd probably have all sorts of cool new armor and even more pieces that brought CCBS and old school Tactic together. They might look nothing like they did at the start of G2 by the time it ended. It felt like the sky was the limit. But now it's just a dream. And I don't think everyone has quite adequately grasped just how truly shocking and insane this actually is. LEGO typically plans to keep lines like this going for 3 years, or at least 2.5. During those years, they plan out their next theme and replace the current line with that one once the existing theme is ended. So giving a theme 6 waves, or at least 5, has become pretty standard practice. That rhythm they've created is the way they do things now. That's typically the minimum. That's what they did with Ninjago's first run, and then they did that with Chima, which they intended to be Ninjago's successor. To paraphrase, they basically said, when you see this next line, you'll be like, what Ninjago? So 5 waves each. Now Chima wasn't well received by everyone, but it sold well enough to finish its run, even if it kinda lost all its steam and relevance by the time the final wave rolled out, and was promptly replaced by Nexo Knights, which in turn will be replaced by another successor in a couple years, unless it proves popular enough to keep running longer than Chima did. Ninjago became more popular than LEGO could ever have expected, so that theme was brought back, becoming an evergreen theme not unlike Bionicle G1 was for a time, but there was still a gap when the first run ended because LEGO needed more time to plan out its next run. So thanks to Ninjago's unprecedented success, they changed their policy. So now, instead of limiting a typical theme to 3 years, if a theme can prove itself to be viable in those early sales figures, it'll be similarly upgraded to evergreen status and continue as long as it remains viable. Which Chima did. So you see, these people do things way in advance, like years. They don't just whip up a set and then start shipping it out the next month. So even if Bionicle didn't sell that well for various reasons, we could at least rest assured that it would finish its 3-year run, so all of LEGO's work wouldn't go to waste. How wrong we were. This kind of thing doesn't just happen, guys. The only way LEGO could do this is like, this line didn't just sell bad, it had to tank. It must have sold apocalyptically bad right out the gate. The first winter wave must have left shelves so slowly that somebody at LEGO saw those sales figures coming in during those first few months, spit their coffee all over their screen, and ran to their superiors in a panic, screaming all the way, "Holy crap, you guys! We gotta cancel this line right now! Like, tomorrow! We're hemorrhaging money!" But by then, they'd already developed the next 3 waves to their final stages, so they may as well release those and try to make some of that money back. And now we've run out of whatever products they were able to finish. I don't know what to think of this, but I can guess. There are many things this could be blamed on, though I mainly blame LEGO's lukewarm marketing. Bionicle was basically dead on arrival in that regard. This whole action figure thing is a much harder sell for kids than it used to be. The world of LEGO is a much bigger place than it was in 2001. Bionicle can't be top dog like it was back then, because back then LEGO's other stuff wasn't interesting or big enough to compete with it. I think there was a large part of whatever factors made it easier for the theme to be so successful back then. That is not the case anymore. System sets are selling great. That's LEGO's bread and butter now, as I'm sure no doubt many brick-centric AFOLs feel it always ought to be. With the popularity of Ninjago and the pleasant surprise that was the fantastic LEGO movie, kids are crazy about bricks now, and CCBS is a part of this push too. It's basically the closest construction figures as we know them will ever get to being built with classic LEGO bricks without actually being made of bricks. But these same kids, at least a lot of them, don't really care about action figures. Today's kid is born with an iPad in their hands. It's starting to replace action figures just like those replaced rocking horses and wheeled duckies that you'd pull around on strings, or the classic pushing a can around with a stick. LEGO has found ways to combat this with their system sets, such as LEGO Agents Second Run, Nexo Knights, and most notably LEGO Dimensions. And this was working out for them, but Bionicle didn't fare so well. Now their heart was in the right place. Everything we didn't like about the 2015 animations was designed to make it work in what LEGO clearly felt was the only way it could in this day and age. The art was simple, clean, and defined, making it easy to watch on the smaller screen of an iPhone, and the episodes themselves were very short, bite-sized, easily digestible chunks that could be watched and finished during a bus ride to school. And it sounds like a smart strategy, but relying primarily, if not solely, on this to make Bionicle reach the kids of the day just wasn't enough, and by the time they finally got around to releasing books, games, and an actual show to support it, it was too late. The damage was done. LEGO needs to be much more aggressive when they push construction on the kids of today. Yes, I think they should have given it a show in 2015, at least like 10 episodes or 13, and maybe focus some of them on a certain toe or other, giving kids time to really get to know them like we did back in the day. And the online animations, comics, iPhone games, and what have you would support that. LEGO evidently made a mistake by expecting our generation, us older fans, to market the current line to the new generation for them. LEGO was banking on our nostalgia to carry the line long enough for it to click with kids, but that clearly didn't work seeing how many people rejected it as some Hero Factory rehash. Whatever you think about it personally, LEGO simply didn't give children enough incentive to want to have anything to do with Bionicle, when they have a wealth of other, bigger, safer themes vying for their attention. Imagine you're a little kid in December last year, or January this year, and you just saw The Force Awakens and thought it was awesome. Let's say you go to Toys R Us or Walmart the next day, and you pass the Lego aisle. Who are you going to want when you see them on the shelves? Of course you're going to want your favorite characters from that awesome movie you love. They've got Kylo Ren and Finn and Rey and Poe and Phasma. They're all there. Why would you ever bother with these? What the heck is a Bionicle? Some weird alien robot things that look kinda cool, but you've probably never seen them before and you don't know these characters very well. So what incentive do you have? What reason has LEGO given the children of today to choose Bionicle over their other lines? Oh hey, your older brother's told you about it once or twice before because he collected things like that when he was a kid. Oh yeah, that's a great selling point. You really sold me on that one, LEGO. But you see, even in the case of Star Wars, kids aren't buying these because they like construction figures. No, they're buying them because they love Star Wars. That's why this line is doing well and Bionicle isn't, because it's a bigger, safer brand that LEGO barely even needs to put any effort into promoting. These are going to sell no matter what. Bionicle never had a chance. You know, just today, before I even wrote this script, I was at a family gathering at one of our summer cottages, and I spent some time with this one little cousin I haven't seen since like Christmas, and he told me, without me even asking or whatever, that he likes Bionicles. Kid's like 7, he probably doesn't even know that it's been cancelled yet or even understand what that means. And I've heard other people who were there to experience G1s share similar stories about their little cousins or siblings getting into G2, or even G1. But clearly, these kids are a very small minority compared to the vast number of kids more interested in LEGO's other, louder, more aggressively marketed and in-their-face themes. And to be honest, it kind of makes me wonder if it's even possible for a line like Bionicle, not just Bionicle itself, but anything even vaguely resembling it in some way, to ever succeed in this day and age. Or maybe it isn't possible. Maybe too many of today's kids are just too different from us and don't like the same things. Maybe the world and toys have changed too much for Bionicle to succeed. Like, construction itself isn't going anywhere. CCBS is still a viable building system that LEGO will continue to use in themes like Star Wars. But will we ever see anything outside of that? Has the spirit of LEGO construction died? We're certainly not going to see Bionicle replaced by another original IP along the line of Nexo Knights next year. Their designers haven't had enough time to finish developing a theme like that going by their usual development cycle, so we won't see anything like that until 2018 at the earliest. Or at least, that's how we could have expected things to go if Bionicle was even moderately successful. But now that it's sold so badly, LEGO had no choice but to pull the plug so prematurely. Will this make them reluctant to release a new construction theme? Will they play it safe and keep releasing Star Wars and superhero ultra builds and just leave it at that? Will they go back to the drawing board, looking at G2 as a cautionary tale so they can know what to avoid doing with other lines in the future? And lastly, what's going to happen to Bionicle itself? Well, at least within LEGO itself, I think we're good. Bionicle is an important theme to LEGO. Nothing is going to change that. There are many people in that company who have championed Bionicle as the theme that saved LEGO, and who tried their hardest to make Bionicle great and are probably way more disheartened than we are by what's happened. Hopefully, several or maybe even many years from now, enough people within LEGO will be inclined to take an introspective look and realize, wow, we really dropped the ball that time. But it's still a good theme with a lot of potential for success. So let's learn from our mistakes and do things differently this time. Even though there are currently no plans to bring Bionicle back, when the subject of G3 came up on Twitter, a LEGO representative plainly answered that this possibility cannot be completely ruled out. Even now, LEGO still no doubt recognizes Bionicle as a legitimate IP that could still come back in some form or other and is deserving enough that they try again someday. Retailers, on the other hand, will be much, much harder to convince. See, stores like Walmart and Target and Toys R Us have to buy their stock from manufacturers. Then, when those products are sold again through the store, that store gets a cut, so they make that money back. When a product they've invested in doesn't sell, they're going to be less inclined to buy any future stock from that company. When Bionicle was cancelled the first time, it wasn't selling badly. But LEGO saw those numbers going down and stopped production to protect the IP and stop it from really dying. See, at least if it ended while it was still selling okay, they could bring it back at a later date. A retailer would look at those later numbers and see that the theme was still viable, and that they could expect Bionicle to sell at least as well as it did during its twilight years, if not better. That's why LEGO was able to bring Bionicle back, because the numbers in those later years were still okay. But if it's sold so badly that stores like Walmart and Target are still trying to get rid of last year's stock, and have grown so tired of the theme that they aren't even accepting the latest wave, making these sets effectively one big Toys R Us exclusive, how reluctant do you think they'll be to allow these things into their stores again? If LEGO tries to put together a Generation 3 now, or at any point in the near future, these store owners aren't going to look back at G1 because it sold great at first. They're going to go by the most recent and most reliable data to judge how successful they can reasonably expect another revival to be. They'll look at whatever LEGO's selling them and think, yeah, sure, because it worked out so well last time, right? Get that swag out of here. And this isn't a stupid or short-sighted way to do things. These people can't just say yes to every new product being presented to them because, oh, it sold great for a while that one time, a couple of decades ago, or however long it'll be by then. They have to rely on the latest data, on the most relevant information they have, because that's the closest older products like that come to in any way representing current trends. It's easy for us to say from the comfort of our armchairs, well, they should give Bionicle a chance because of its potential. And sure, it'd be nice if they did. But we can't reasonably expect them to. That sentiment isn't going to mean anything to the people at the top if they've come to know Bionicle as that one particular LEGO IP that doesn't sell because it's toxic and the kids don't like it. Stick to Star Wars. Can you see why this line has failed? Really actually failed this time. The only way Bionicle could feasibly return after G2's early wave sold as bad as they must have is if the more recent waves suddenly started selling like hotcakes. If Journey to 1 became a smash hit and Bionicle products started leaving the shelves in much greater numbers, a massive turnaround like that, this sudden upward trend, would show how viable the theme is. LEGO would get right back to work on it with a new story and bring it back in a year or two as some sort of sequel to G2, and retailers would be more eager to populate their store shelves with these characters. But we don't have any indication that things are going that way. This is what worries me about the future of the theme. I just don't see how it could recover from this. But I'm even more worried that this rotten taste that's left in store owners' mouths may create a sort of prejudice that could extend to other potential construction themes that aren't guaranteed to sell the way Star Wars is. And also, this is going to upset a lot of people, but I need to talk about the fans for a bit. You know who I'm talking about. LEGO expecting us to carry the theme into the new generation pretty much by ourselves was a stupid strategy, no argument there. But I did my part. I gave LEGO almost $600 for all these sets, for crying out loud. That's no joke. Jang did his part, TTV did their part. We all tried to give this line as much exposure and promotion as we could because we believed it was worth our time. But on various message boards and comment threads, you'll see people who are saying this entire complex situation, all these factors, all of this, can be attributed to one thing. The fact that LEGO used Hero Factory parts. And I am so sick of seeing people spreading this toxic crap, insisting that LEGO never really had the guts to bring back the real Bionicle, and that they've been trying to trick us all this time into buying CCBS because you're actually not supposed to like it because it's a bad system that you can't build anything worthwhile with, or some baseless cockamamie rhetoric like that. They basically want LEGO to bankrupt themselves by bringing back all the new molds. I'm not going to say this very vocal chunk of the Bionicle community was big enough to have killed G2 themselves, but they sure didn't help. I find it kind of insulting that people could just pretend that this line hasn't made big strides throughout its run and is still comparable to Hero Factory. I mean, Hero Factory was a cute idea and all, but a lot of the later sets were rubbish. But I already touched upon that in my 2015 Toa Mega review, so I won't go into my reasons for thinking that for a second time here. These people aren't worth talking about any more than I already have, and they will never be able to convince me that CCBS isn't a fun system to work with, or that these figures are crap. Even when it comes to G2 supporters though, there's still some blame to be found. G2's story had some good ideas, but its execution was lukewarm and nothing special. I think we can all agree on that to some extent. But there are some people who have enjoyed G2 a great deal, but were content to simply keep up with a story and didn't actually buy any of the sets. And then they act surprised that the line didn't sell well enough to fund the story for another year. Seriously? I'm not even gonna harp on these people. I'm not mad at them. I'm just using this anecdote to illustrate a point that just as there are many different types of Bionicle fans, there are also many reasons why Bionicle failed. And it can't all be chalked up to any one easy to blame thing like CCBS. The worst it gets is these people who are laughing in our faces, people in the Bionicle community who are eating this up, making fun of us for being invested in a toy line as if they themselves aren't. The people going, why are you even surprised? Of course G2 is going to fail. It's like so hard, Hero Factory. The kind of people who have been kept awake at night for almost 2 years by the idea that people are enjoying this line that they don't approve of people enjoying, and who are happy, nay, rejoicing that it's ended, because they think the mere existence of G2 somehow tarnishes G1, and they think they need to avenge it somehow by killing G2, because they don't want Bionicle to be like Transformers, where it can be remade over and over and over again and be enjoyed by new generations, by people besides them, people who aren't worthy and aren't true fans like them, that it's sacred and it needs to be their special something that nobody else gets to touch because they don't understand. Like, that's so selfish, it's repugnant to celebrate G2 ending, to act like this is somehow a positive thing. That is good that people don't get to enjoy this thing anymore. Yay! Other people don't get to enjoy something that I don't like anymore. LEGO finally made a smart move by canceling something that people could have enjoyed without my approval. I can't imagine how miserable it must be to have so much rot inside that you have to derive some sick satisfaction from the very fact that other people aren't able to enjoy something in order to make yourself happy, to feel good because of that. Because it is sick. Very. People shouldn't be this bitter over a toy line. I'm just trying to imagine what sort of ego and at the same time insecurities one must have to feel like something they love is being attacked by the mere existence of some new version of it, that this will retroactively hurt the older thing they love by going back in time or whatever, that no, they have to protect the memory of it, they must preserve its purity. You know who you are. And if you're not, well, great. On the other hand, I do greatly appreciate the people on various sides of our community who are being respectful about this. Callan has been very critical of G2, sets and all, but his latest video was just what people like me needed to see, and his dark humor made me laugh much harder than it should have. I don't want to see G2's cancellation divide the community any more than its existence already has. Before I talk about how I'm going to carry on from here though, I want to talk about Journey to One itself for a little bit. Journey to Done, as I like to call it, wasn't even that good. I mean, the first 2 episodes were okay, they were acceptable, but that last episode was awful. To quote Jang, once again, the graphic style and quality was very good. The writing, though, was truly terrible. Words that come to mind include cliché, predictable, repetitive, lowbrow, thin, shallow, unimaginative, disappointing, cringeworthy, sad, and forgettable. In fact, it felt almost insulting. The wrap-up, instead of leaving open the imaginative possibilities of a future of exciting adventures, essentially renders the entire franchise utterly meaningless. What an incredibly unfortunate way to go out. Dang! That's a pretty scathing review coming from a clean guy like Jang. I'll be sure to link the original blog entry if you want to read his full thoughts on how things have gone. Really though, even as dull and weirdly paced as it was, the show did get a little exciting near the end. We got our first look at a grand city with a scale on par with Metro Nui, this place that was clearly supposed to be the setting for the entirety of 2017. We see Shadowy Okoden serving Makuta, not unlike the Shadow Matoran of 2008. And holy smokes, there's Makuta! I mean, his design isn't that great, but still. It felt for a little while like they were hyping up the final year. I was getting more excited by the minute. And then Gally escapes the Shadow Realm, returns to her body, and we get a cliché power struggle that sends Makuta and the Toa back to where they came from. The story ended way too quickly. I went, hold on, is that it? It was obvious by then that they'd taken all of the material they were saving for 2017 and condensed it all into the last 6 or so minutes of Journey to One. Sorry, what? Really, I should have seen this coming right away. While the Toa are busy fighting the Shadow Horde beast, Umrak goes looking for the 6 fragmented pieces of Makuta's Mask of Ultimate Power, which I have no doubt were going to be next year's collectibles. Maybe each piece, representing a different element and packaged with a different Toa, could be a different color, and the mask itself would be huge, made specifically to be worn by a massive Titan set with a custom-built head for the completed mask to fit over. That would be awesome, and yet Umrak finds them all in what couldn't have been more than like an hour or 2 in their time. Then we get to the Black Crater, the city that used to be there, the Shadow Realm. I assumed that Umrak would open the portal, attempt to pull Makuta through, and then the Toa would stop him, only to get sucked into the Shadow Realm themselves, and the entire 3rd year would take place in a nightmare world under Makuta's rule. Say what you will about G2's story, that would have been an excellent way to end it and tie everything together. But nope. They had to rush it. In fact, given all this material they had to work with, seeing it scrunched up like this is probably one of the most, if not the most rushed ending to a story I have ever seen in my entire life. It's even more rushed than G1's ending. I was kind of stunned by it. Look at all this material gone to waste. Just think of how cool the sets could have been if we ever got that far. Oh well. The whole thing was just insulting, especially how they handled the whole concept of the Toa's destiny, their entire adventure being written in stone beforehand, and Akimu knowing how everything was going to play out and not telling them anything, leading them on to get their butts kicked over and over and over again because that's the way it was supposed to play out. In other words, that's the way it was written to be. What a sham. So much wasted potential for an ending that could have been at least decent, if not epic. Hey guys, this is just something extra I wanted to squeeze into the video. After I recorded all this other stuff, a light bulb appeared above my head and I had this great idea of my own way that Journey to One could have ended. Okay, so the Toa are in their power struggle with Makuta. They've just about completely used up their powers to banish him to the Shadow Realm. You know, they're about to disappear into light and shoot into space and all that. But then, at the last second, Akimu sees them writhing in pain. He sees their determination. He doesn't want them to have to suffer this. So he rewrites destiny. He changes things. He jumps in the path of the beam and uses his own power to finish the ritual and banish Makuta. And so he disappears. And the Toa, they fall to the ground. They collapse because their power's been almost completely drained. And it's like they're in shock, but they're still alive. And then they hear Akimu's voice coming from the heavens. And they hear him say that he wants them to write their own destinies now. He wants them to continue living in this world, to live among the Okodans and learn to enjoy life and all that stuff, that he doesn't want them to leave, that their power will always be needed and all that. I think that would be a much better ending than the one we got. Yeah, I just seriously just thought this up just out of nowhere. I'm writing a better story than Lego. Okay, back to the video. If there's one somewhat positive thing I can take from this whole thing, well, it's another $200 to $300 that I won't be giving Lego next year, and I can put it towards something else. That's probably the most cynical thing I never thought I'd have to say on this channel. It's not like we haven't been here before, but Bionicle as a brand may be in much worse shape this time than it was when Lego simply put it to bed for a while in 2010. It didn't catch on with G1ers, and it didn't click with kids. Well, some, but obviously not enough. There's something final about this. It's disconcerting to say the least. You may be half expecting me to end this video by saying I don't know how to carry on from here, but actually, I do. I am never going to stop being a Bionicle fan. I'll always like it. I've put Nova Orbis on the back burner for a while as I work on another series that I get to reveal. But I may have found a new format that'll help me churn out chapters much quicker, and I'll try to get back to work on it in the next month or so. There is a void to be filled by this series, and I want to be able to do that for all the burned Bionicle fans who want to see it continue in some form. I've also just ordered a bunch of parts on Bricklink that I'll need to finish touching up my revamps of most of the G2 characters. So once those parts come in, I'll put something together with those final updates to these characters and some closing thoughts to end this era of Bionicle with. I know this video has been fairly negative, but I'm going to try to go back to being positive from now on, whether Bionicle comes back again or not. And with no more G2 reviews coming up, I guess that leaves me more time to review video games. You know, those other things I'm known to talk about sometimes. Yay! I know this has been a pretty slow year so far on that front. I've just been enjoying summer too much to dedicate time to making videos. As things cool down though, I'll return to my usual pace. It's all game reviews from here. Still, there'll undoubtedly always be another next time that I talk about Bionicle, you know, this franchise that I love so much, or just Lego at large again. This isn't the end. See you around, peeps.